but that's being a little extra.
And no one in this interview has ever been a bit extra. Okie doke. So, here's a fun question. I like to say that my cat adopted me since I don't think I had much say in the matter, and I think he might be Magick. How could I tell if my cat's actually my familiar and not just a bit extra for a cat?
Okay, well, there's a couple things. Familiars do choose their people, so that's your first sign. That doesn't necessarily mean that you always find them in a weird way, but like, you know, it's still possible that the puppy you get for Christmas could still be like your familiar. But you tend to notice things about them, personality traits and behaviors that indicate that they are protective of you. You know, some people will say like their animals like their soulmate, like their best friend, like the only one who understands them. They happen to like be there. Like emotional support animals are a really good example. The way that they react when you're in like emotional distress. When she was just a few months old, I hadn't had her for long. She was maybe 7 or 8 months old. I was doing a ritual in the living room and I had her pinned off in the kitchen so she could see me, but she couldn't like get into my candles and shit. And she lost her shit because she was pinned off during a ritual. So she was feeling all of like the energy and all of the shit that was going on. And she was so upset. She screamed, she cried, she barked at me. She tried to go over the gate. She tried to tear the gate down. She was so upset. And I thought she was just like having like an episode or whatever. So I kind of like ended my ritual quickly, like put everything away, cleared everything up and let her out. And she sniffed out like the exact area where my circle was and then went looking for all of my like various tools and things because she wanted to know where I had put it. And she was like really upset to not be involved. So from then on, I have involved her in my rituals. That's just an example, like how you kind of know if your animal wants to be your familiar, is your familiar, but you still have to like ask them and like initiate them into your processes if you're going to use them that way. Consent. So yeah, and I feel like if you ask an animal to be your familiar and they don't consent, like you'll know.
I call my cat my manager, and he is a micromanager. Go ahead.
That's great.
No, well, for real though. He'll wake me up, and then I'll be like, okay, like an hour. And then he'll give me anywhere between 30 minutes to an exact hour. And if I don't get my ass out of bed, he will take the covers off of me. Like, he'll go, get your ass out of bed. Get your ass out of bed. No.
Love it.
It's great. It's great.
The thing about Magick is that there are a lot of really specific questions you can ask. And I do think they're good to ask. And I do something similar. I think it's really important to always ask questions and find the answers to them. The trouble with Magick is that a lot of times the answer is a lot simpler, but not concrete. A lot of it comes down to what feels right. Going back to like what you believe, who you are as a person, and whether or not you're like in touch with your intuition. If you've got a strong feeling that your cat is your familiar, then they probably are, and you just have to like ask them and initiate them and stuff. My dog went out of her way to tell me that she wanted to help me, but that was what I needed at the time. It's gonna be different for everybody. You know, I can't give you like a list of signs and symptoms. I mean, I could.
You mean you don't have a fun BuzzFeed listicle, just like how to tell if your cat's a familiar. Number 30 is really cute. Like, not fair.
BuzzFeed. They're the worst. They're the worst. Yeah, I know that it's not like pop culture-y of me. It's not like aesthetic of me, but I really don't think you can put witchery in a box like that. And you know, tick the bullet points and say, okay, I've got these things, I'm a witch. Like it's just not, it doesn't work that way.
A lot of the stuff, whether it's figuring out if magic's for you, or figuring out what kind of magic's for you, or figuring out if you've been adopted by a magical critter, and that's why you started getting into magic, because it was like, no, bitch. No. Get your ass out of bed.
Okay, but you named him Merlin.
Because he's magically perfect.
I'm just saying, you were asking for that.
He's magically perfect. I brought him home. His name was going to be Salami, because that was the first human food that he got. And then he was just so wonderful and perfect, and he gives me hugs, and I love him so much. And my girlfriend accepts that she will always come second in my heart to him, which is really lovely.
I mean, it matters.
It does. So again, it seems like a lot of this is really intuition based and what feels right. So I might be on the verge of understanding my next question, which is, how could you tell if you're ready to do a certain spell? Because I know you're all about safety and not like overstepping what you're ready for, because it might have negative consequences. So how do you know if you're ready? Is that just like intuition based? And does that backfire if you're like kind of cocky? You're like, yeah, I'm ready for this. Because I've got into meals being like, I'm ready for this. And then I wasn't. So I don't think I should go into magic that way.
I mean, you're right. You should not go into that way.
This is why I ask.
It is partly intuition, but it's not all intuition. It depends on the spell. If a ritual requires multiple people and you're going to do it by yourself, you need to take a step back and think about the repercussion. If the spell requires multiple people because of a belief that you don't hold to, then that's one thing. But if it requires multiple people because of safety measures, if you're dealing with like voodoo invocation, one person is gonna be the medium and is gonna channel the spirit. There needs to be other people there to get the message, to take safety measures, to make sure that like any medical needs are taken care of, to make sure that nothing gets knocked over and the apartment doesn't get burned down. You just don't do that shit by yourself. You need to have a minimum of one other person. So there's things like that to consider. There are preparations to consider. Some rituals require that you repeat the ritual every day for a certain amount of days, and that means that that's a lot of preparation every day for a certain amount of days, or the same day every week for a certain amount of weeks, things like that. So you have to think about whether or not you're prepared to put that kind of effort into something. I don't think it's like, I'm a level 3 witch now, and you will find shit like that. You'll find books that are like witchcraft level 1, witchcraft level 2. This isn't Hogwarts. So some of it does require just like using your better judgment. Like if something looks like it's too complicated and you look at it and you're like, then that's probably a good sign that you're not ready for it. But that being said, like, I'm not saying that you should back down from a challenge necessarily. If something needs to be done, if you need something and you're the only one who can, you need something, you need a spell performed and it's for serious whatever reasons, figure the shit out. Like, learn how to do it. Make sure you have what you need to get it done. Yeah, and then I guess like some of it is about like how much experience you have, I guess. I wouldn't necessarily, like, to use the fire analogy from earlier, I guess, like, you don't want to go around trying to start fires places thinking you can control them if you have never at that level. And the consequences are going to be different for everything. For something like that, the consequences could be that you end up burning your apartment down. The consequences of, evoking an entity and not having anyone around is that, you could end up possessed or mentally flipped over, or you could knock a candle over and burn your apartment down. Somebody won't necessarily be there to get the message that you're there to get because you might not be conscious. There's if you're dealing with trickster spirits and you don't accept the consequences of dealing with a trickster spirit and a bunch of shit starts looking like you've got a lot of bad luck, like that would scare a lot of people. A lot of people would not necessarily want to deal with the tricks and craziness and signs and symptoms that kind of come with dealing with some of the darker like entities or whatever. So if you don't understand what you're getting into and you don't do the background research, then you're not going to be prepared for what happens, and that can be dangerous. Again, it's not the kind of thing I'd say like never do it. I'm not going to tell people not to do certain types of magic, but you always need to do your research.
Cool. Speaking of making sure that you have all the things you need before you get into a spell or ritual or whatever, do you need a lot of physical stuff to do witchcraft? Because it just seems like a lot of stuff. Or can you kind of forage with what you have and in the woods, or do you just accumulate it over time?
It does seem like there's a lot of stuff. Now we have these lovely shops, which I love. In New Orleans, they're like on every corner, and they're amazing, but is that stuff required? No, it's not. A lot of that stuff is actually there for people who are not witches and need, you know, like an at-home kit, spells in a bag and things like that that are pre-spelled candles, pre-spelled trinkets and amulets and whatever, are really for people who don't know how to do it themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. People make a living doing this stuff, and that's great. But if you are like in quarantine and you can't go out, or you don't have a lot of money, or you're a kid, stay safe. Ask your parents for help with knives and fire. Tools are a nice to have, I guess. They're not a need to have. If you were dealing with like rituals and deities and stuff, they can be very useful, but you can always make do with what you have. A lot of times people can make do with what they have in their kitchen, or they can make do with what they have in their yard. And actually, cultural systems like African American root work are fundamentally based in getting what you need from the earth and like various geographic locations, specifically using river mud or specifically using graveyard dirt or twigs and feathers and things that you find out and around. If anybody ever tells you like you have to have a certain crystal or you have to have a certain tool, a wand or an amulet or anything, then they're just trying to get you to buy stuff, and or they're lying, or they're just not mature enough to understand that magic takes as many forms as people.
So let's say you got a spell, you have a problem, you have a spell, it's in your, you could do it, you got all the stuff, you did the thing. How can you tell if it worked?
There's a couple ways. I know I always say that. It a little bit depends on like, and a little bit depends on like what your process is. So if you're the kind of person that like wants some definite like yeses or nos or whatever, you could try divination. You could ask if it was successful or if it will be successful, and then take the answer that you get. You know, you could use tarot, or you could use you could scry, you could use a pendulum, something like that. You could meditate and ask your higher self or one of your spirit guides. You could, when you're doing the spell, you could add in specifications that require signs and symbols. Like if you're dealing with deities or spirits or even just the universe, you can ask for like synchronicities. Like if you say you do a twin flame love spell, and you're like, in order to prove to myself that this has worked, or like when this works, or as proof that my spell is effective, I would like to see like signs and synchronicities that relate to like me and my twin flame. And you can ask for something specific. You could be like, I want to see the number 1111, 5 times in order to know that this worked. Or you can, but that's being a little extra.
And no one in this interview has ever been a bit extra. Ever.
No. None of us. None of us. A great way to do it is to just ask for signs that it's happening, that as it manifests, that you will see signs that it's manifesting. Like for a lot of people with like money spells and stuff, that could be like symbols showing up, or like like a $10 bill showing up somewhere you don't really expect it. And like that $10 bill isn't the answer to your monetary problems, but it is like a way of knowing that it's coming.
Also, $10 is $10.
True. But the reason that I say that is because there's a lot of ways that signs can materialize, and a lot of people like just brush. I mean, people see signs and synchronicities all the time and then just brush it off as a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence. If you do a spell and you ask for signs and you use your logical brain and say, okay, this could be a coincidence, that could be a coincidence, but maybe these 5 things together in the span of a week, probably not. Like, these things all strung together, there's just a lot of them, you know? So like, that's where you use your better judgment, and you can always like look at something and be like, okay, was I waiting for the clock to turn to 11:11, or did I see that like a thing was posted on my calendar at 11:11 and that was really weird? Or like, you know, were you sitting outside with like a lightning rod waiting for lightning to strike so you could be like, look, lightning struck? Or, you know, did it just happen in like a weird place, or like a storm that wasn't necessarily, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. So here's a follow-up question. So let's say you do your spell and it works, but you don't like how it worked.
Sorry. Please continue.
Oh no, that's it. Can you be like, may I speak to my manager? Can you pull a Karen, I guess? I don't know. Are there take backsies?
Take backsies. Well, that happens a lot. People themselves a lot. Some spells can be reversed and some cannot, which is why it's really important to do your research and understand the level of commitment that you're making to something. Also, some things are in the wording, you know? Okay, I'll actually share this now because I can. A while ago, I was doing some pretty intense spells because I was asking for ADA accommodations from my workplace to allow me to work from home so that I could, which was a totally viable thing for my company. It's not like I was asking for something that was ridiculous, but I put together a proposal and I like did all of the necessary like legal things. And then I also worked some spells because I was so anxious and I was having a hard time in workplace, and like I just really wanted to be working from home. So when the decision came back, and mind you, all things were pointing in my favor. When the decision came back, they basically flat out denied me and said that I could have like a single day to work from home a week. And I was like, all right, I mean, that's something. And at first I felt really awful and I was like, I failed. Maybe I could put this one on my YouTube channel. Like, this is something I failed at. Like, I can tell people I suck. But then I was like, thank you.
Keep going.
But I was like, you know, there is something that I must have done wrong, right? I was a little upset for a while, and then I came back around and I remembered, you know, everything that I've learned, and I was like, I need to respect the work and not lose faith in my spell work just because it doesn't look like I got what I wanted. Maybe this means that I'll be able to support myself with my own business soon, or I'll get a different job, or you know, something. So I was like, I picked myself up and I was like, okay, you know, maybe we'll look for remote work, or do some more freelancing, or, you know, put some more effort into things. I shit you not, within 2 weeks, we were all sent to work from home for quarantine. I'm not like by any means like taking responsibility for a pandemic, but I feel like I sent my spell into the universe and the universe was like, so this is already on its way. We'll just place things in order that need to be placed and then let it go. It was like a really fucking lazy, like,
Yeah.
this bitch doesn't like
I mean,
even like
that sounds like some shit
sit down
I would
and
pull.
wait.
Of like, oh, well, I was already gonna do this thing, so yeah, we'll just, fine. Yeah. Done.
We'll call it a favor. We'll call it a favor. Yeah, I was thinking of you when I did it. Exactly. And when it happened, I was like, what? And now I am permanently working from home, right? Because I'm freelancing and I was laid off and stuff. So when I was starting to get anxious about like going back to the office and stuff, like, I don't want to say I brought my layoff on me necessarily, but I did do some spell work to make it so that I could work from home, and I am doing that. So it's not necessarily gonna look like what you want it to look like. If you've got a very like specific idea in your brain about what you think the results are going to be, then you'd better be sure that your spell is going to deliver on those very specific results, and that requires an incredible amount of wording and specificity, and it also has to be possible. It has to be physically possible. Like if you like say you're trying to like, is it like, if I'm gonna assume everybody's seen Practical Magic because it was an amazing movie from like the 90s, 80s. Oh my god, Practical Magic is incredible. It's Sandra Bullock and a bajillion other beautiful women. This love spell where the girl specifically tries to attract an impossible man because she never wants to fall in love because there's a curse if she does. So
I have seen this.
That he
okay, keep going.
So he's got like a certain color eye, and his symbol is the star, and there's like all of this stuff that she like goes into about like how like, and she's decided like this person obviously can't exist, so she's safe. And he shows up, when she's in her 30s, and he's got a blue eye and a green eye, and he's a sheriff, so he like is always wearing like a star-shaped badge, and he's his favorite food is pancakes, and it was like he checked off all the things on the list that she'd made when she was like 8 years old, and it was insane. But that's a movie, right? If you like have a very specific list of things that you want and they exist, then that's how you get them.
Okay, cool. Here's a fun question. Where can I make other witch friends?
On TikTok?
Those ladies scare me. Some of them are really nice. Others are a bit much. And that's coming from me.
That's a little harder. There are communities for witches on Reddit. There are a few like witches on YouTube if you search on Instagram and use social media or whatever. Honestly, I would put out like an intention to meet like like-minded people, and then just not have necessarily like specific expectations of what those people are gonna look like, like not like the bitches from Coven like walking up like, I'm a witch, I'm gonna be your friend now. Like, you're not necessarily gonna see them coming, but like I have known a lot of witches in my life that like I found out were practitioners after spending some time getting to know them. People I met at college, like through gaming clubs, and people I met through the theater and stuff like that. You can also, hang around witching shops, but then you're a lurker. So it's...
I did imagine like you hiding in a bush just being like, I have shiny rock for friend, like a penguin.
Yeah. Unfortunately, witchcraft is very isolating. It can be extremely isolating, and so unless you have there's a temple nearby or something, and you walk in and you're like, let me be one of you, excuse me, which there's nothing wrong with doing that. There are some voodoo temples around the country. There are various other They're like Wiccan like groups. There's the Temple of Witchcraft, I think, based in Salem. They have like a pretty big online presence, and you can do like correspondence, like coursework basically with them, and like get initiated into their rites and stuff, which is super cool if that's your thing. Like ways to find witches. I personally like to let them come to me. The things that I need in my life tend to show up when I need them to, and friendships are like that. And unfortunately, like, it's still a bit of a stigma to be a witch, and it's also not common. We're not like a majority, so people don't really walk around necessarily like wearing it on their sleeve. It's not obvious necessarily when you see someone. You can't be like, that person's a witch. I mean, sometimes, but a lot of times too, people just like the witchy aesthetic and they think it looks cool, and they're not actual practitioners. And when it comes down to it, you still might have completely different like practices, which is fine, because then you can learn from each other, or you can like agree to disagree. But like if you've got completely different, religious viewpoints or like ethics or whatever, then like just because someone's a witch doesn't mean you kind of get along, right? If it's something that you really want is to like connect with more people who are like-minded, there's groups on the internet, and there are some temples around. I'd put an intention out there, like maybe do a spell to just attract like-minded people and see what happens, because there's not a lot of us. More witches than not are kind of like in the closet.
That makes sense.